Nobody loves the GP coaching tree more than Baylor head coach Dave Aranda.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right. Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. I've covered TCU athletics for the past 12 years. Yesterday, news broke that TCU safeties coach, Paul Gonzales, was moving on. He had been at TCU for 12 seasons. He had coached corners in the past. He had survived 3 coaching changes, essentially. He was there when Gary Patterson was there. And then TCU parts ways with Gary Patterson. Sonny Dykes comes in, and Paul's one of the guys that he says, hey, I need to have him on my staff to help this transition move forward. Joe Gillespie leaves at the end of this past season, and Andy Avalos comes in. Sonny says, hey, we need Paul Gonzales on the staff. So very beloved, was a guy that coaches, players seemed to really get along with. I remember when Gary was let go, there were a number of players that threw Paul's name out there. It's like, hey, we want Coach Gonzales to get a chance to be the interim, to lead this team through the rest of the season. Now, they ended up going with Jerry Kill, but it just spoke to the respect that that team had for Paul, especially the secondary. He's coached, Trayvon Merrick, who was Thorpe Award winner, has gone on to have a really good career in the NFL. Our Darius Washington has shown out for the Ravens this year, which has been really fun to see. That was Paul Gonzales. You get the picture. He's been really effective. So this was surprising. The thing that surprises me is that he goes to Baylor. But the more I thought about it, Dave Aranda, we've talked about this with the rivalry. We're in a weird place with it. Or the Bluebonnet Battle. I refuse to call it that. But the Baylor-TCU series, that game, which it was so electric in that period from 2013 to 2016, and really 2014, 2015, those 2 years where those two teams were at the top of the league. And those games truly meant something. I mean, it was like Big 12 championship type of stuff on the line. That was amazing. And Art Browse and Gary Patterson legitimately did not like each other. They didn't want to have anything to do with each other. And Sonny, because of his connections in the air raid tree and just his relationships through the years, he's got Kaz Kazadi on staff, who was very out front as a strength coach there at Baylor. He brought on Kendall Browse as the OC. Carlton Buckles was here for a few years. He was part of that Baylor staff for a while. And Dave Aranda brought on Gary Patterson as an analyst. That experiment didn't last very long. Gary left before the year even started. But he had enough respect for Gary that he was like, hey, I want you to be part of this coaching staff. And when Gary got let go, they played Baylor that week. And I remember Dave in the press conference talking about how much respect he had for GP as a coach, and that he went to coaching conventions and coaching school and heard him speak. And he saved like CDs and DVDs that had Gary's teaching on it. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it makes sense as to why he would want Paul Gonzales. I think ultimately Paul just wants promotion. He probably has aspirations of being a defensive coordinator, being a head coach one day. He's going to get a new title, passing game coordinator. He's going to move to coaching corners. And he'll have a lot of input in this defense. He'll be on a staff where the head coach is a respected defensive mind. Dave Aranda also has to figure out what to do with his defense. Because even though Baylor figured out the team towards the end of the year, their success was predicated on the fact that Sawyer Robertson took over for an injured DeQuan Finn, and turns out he was the better quarterback. Bryson Washington comes in as a young running back and starts racking up yardage. The offensive line gets better, but that defense struggled. I mean, that Baylor-TCU game was a matchup of two defenses that were having a hard time slowing those offenses down. And so he's kind of in desperation mode here. He fired his mentor, Ron Roberts, a few years ago. He brought in Matt Powledge as a play caller. That didn't work. He took over the play calling this year. Still didn't really work. And so while some of the pressure is off him and his job security because of the way that they close the season, you can't be a defensive coach and have a bad defense. So he's looking for help here. He's looking for somebody to come in and fix his passing game, help him defend it better, and allow him to be aggressive as a play caller and make things happen. As far as TCU goes, and like where do we go from here, the biggest change in my mind will be this is a huge loss in recruiting. Coach Gonzalez had really good relationships across the state of Texas. He had done a good job dipping into other states as well, especially Louisiana through the years and getting talent. He develops players at a high level. And Bud Clark's coming back. That safety room looks pretty salty for next year. And so along with that continuity, it would have been a big plus if you had your longtime safeties coach still on staff, making things happen and trusting these guys. But that's not going to be the case now. I don't believe this was two personalities clashing with Andy Avalos and Paul Gonzales. I do, however, think it was kind of weird that Sonny brings on a defensive coach, and that's not his thing. So you would think in his mind, I'm hiring a defensive coordinator. I want him to be like the head coach of the defense so that I can keep my hands out of it. I don't need to be in the defensive meetings. I don't need to see what they're doing. I don't need to micromanage that. I can trust Andy Avalos to make those decisions. However, one of the first things he did when Andy took the job was he called his shot and he said, hey, I need these assistants to stay on. I need Carlton Buckles, Jamarcus McFarland, Paul Gonzales to stay at their respective position groups. So it's like you're giving the keys of the defense to somebody and you want to be hands off with it, but almost immediately you're like, well, here's something I need. So in hindsight, that is sort of bizarre to me. And now we look at it. Carlton Buckles leaves right before the season starts for an unspecified reason. It could have been as simple as just a personal reason. And now Paul Gonzales moves on. And I don't think it's because Andy Avalos is just this really difficult guy to work with. Hear me out here. I do believe, though, for Coach Gonzales, who has been through a lot with this program, this university, and I'm sure he's had other offers in the past that have been appealing or intriguing. But for him to jump at this one, I think it speaks to a scenario where he got an offer and he said, hey, Baylor's offering me this. And instead of TCU being like, well, what can we do to keep you? They said, okay. Because now you allow your defensive coordinator to go hire his own person. And a name to watch on that front, Keith Hayward was a defensive coordinator at Oregon State. The news came down yesterday that he was resigning from that position. Keith has a background as a defensive backs coach going all the way back to 2008 at Oregon State. He also coached DBs at Washington, USC, Louisville, but he was a safeties coach at Oregon. And he was a safeties coach at Oregon during the period of time that Andy Avalos was there. And they coached together. And so they know each other. And just the timing of it seems very suspect. Suddenly there's an opening for a safeties coach at TCU, and someone with that experience, with that background, who also has a connection to Andy Avalos, has worked with him before, is suddenly available. So I think that's a name to watch when we talk about who will fill in that role. But my biggest priority with this hire would be, can you get somebody who can hit the ground running recruiting both in the portal and in the high school ranks? Because at least in the immediate, the safeties that he'll be working with are going to be a group that has a lot of experience. And so it shouldn't be a huge undertaking to get them up to speed, so to say. I think the bigger issue will be, can you find a way to keep that recruiting at a high level so that you don't have a drop-off in talent moving forward? When we come back, Deion Sanders could be leaving for the Cowboys, and that's great news for TCU and the rest of the Big 12. Gametime, if you need tickets, download the Gametime app today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. They show you a picture of your view from your seat when you sit down. There's no hidden fees. There's fees involved. They'll tell you what those fees are going to be up front. You don't get to the checkout, and you're like, wait, why am I paying $40 more than I anticipated? No, Gametime makes it easy for you. Download the app today. Again, that promo code is LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. They have flash deals, last-minute sales, so if you're a procrastinator, don't worry. You can still get a good deal on Gametime. I've told the story a few times over the last few weeks, but I got tickets recently for a TCU basketball game. It was super easy. I was done in 5 minutes. I found a good deal. I paid for it. Tickets were on my phone. I got to move on with my life. They make it easy for you. Download the Gametime app today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege. $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. From the moment that Texas and Oklahoma were reportedly leaving the Big 12 from the SEC, there's been a big question that has loomed over the conference. And that question has been, who's going to take over and be the new OU, the new Texas to a lesser extent? Who will be the teams that are consistently at the top of the league, that are playing for conference championships, winning conference championships? And when we first started talking about this, the league was different because the Big 12 hadn't added those Pac-12 teams. But there were a number of teams in the league, all the Texas schools, Tech, Baylor, TCU, Oklahoma State was one of them. UCF had some intrigue because of their location and the good recruiting base that's there in the state of Florida. But the same reasoning came up for each of these schools that I mentioned. Good resources, a fan base and an alumni base that cares about football, donors that really care about football, top-notch facilities, teams that have had consistent success in the past and want to build on that. And then, of course, you have the Pac-12 teams. Utah thought they had a cakewalk. That didn't happen. BYU had an excellent year. Arizona State won the league. I think Kenny Dillingham's a great coach. I know they have a lot returning next year, but can you do it consistently? That's the big question. One of those teams that got added was Colorado, and that was a huge deal because Deion Sanders is the head coach at Colorado. And I feel like Deion Sanders and that Colorado program is the biggest threat and the team right now with the biggest opportunity to be a consistent winner, be a consistent powerhouse in the Big 12, because the recruiting at the moment is pretty even. Now, TCU right now has the highest rated class for 2026 or 2025 in the 247 composite rankings. Sonny Dykes has done a good job in the transfer portal. But while it's really good for the Big 12, it's not approaching that top 20, top 15 status that everybody's searching for. And I think the only coach that could do that right now would be Deion Sanders, because Deion's whole thing is, I'll get you the talent that you need. I'm going to allow my coaches to coach. I'm going to walk into living rooms with the gravitas of being Deion Sanders and make sure that people know when I walk into, a parent's house or somebody comes on a visit, who I am, what I can do, the Hall of Fame player that I am. And so because of that, he gets great athletes, and then he allows his coaches to go make it happen, and he expects them to go make it happen. So in my mind, that's the biggest threat to TCU if we're talking about who could be a consistent winner in this league. It's Deion, and he's proven people wrong everywhere he's been. When he took the Jackson State job, there were a lot of folks who thought that was going to be a failed experiment. He found success. He took Colorado. People thought it was going to be a failed experiment. He proved them wrong. He's had success. He's a huge draw. When TCU played Colorado in the season opener a few years back, that was one of the best weeks ever for this podcast from a viewership and audio download standpoint. And I'm not naive. I'm not delusional. I don't think it's because I had an amazing week as a podcast host. I know it's because there are a ton of fans who love Deion Sanders. And they like what he represents and what he could possibly bring to college football and what he's brought to college football to this point. Well, Adam Schefter reports today that Jerry Jones has had a conversation with Deion Sanders about the Cowboys job, and there is mutual interest there. There's mutual interest between Deion Sanders and Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys for him to become the coach of that franchise. And it would make a ton of sense because Jerry, he loves people that have a connection to his franchise. He likes to hire people that know what it is like to be a Dallas Cowboy. Know what it's like to be part of that organization. Deion gets it. He would also be a huge name, a splash hire. It would dominate the media coverage of the league. And the Cowboys already do that, but it would dominate it even more. And as a TCU fan, I would tell you, you should root for that to happen. Mike McCarthy's contract expired. They're not renewing it. There's an opening there. Bill Belichick's already at North Carolina, which TCU is going to get his college football coaching debut as well. Another very famous person. But if Deion left, Colorado would become irrelevant again. And for Colorado fans that are watching or listening, sorry, but you know what I mean. Colorado football was about as close to anonymous as you could be before Deion got there. Frogs opened their season in Boulder a few years ago. That was a rough scene. That team was not good. They weren't talented. There were not a ton of people there for a Friday night season opener. You get the picture. Deion immediately infused credibility and life into that place. And I'm concerned about what he can do on the recruiting trail. And yeah, it takes coaching too. But so much of this is about player talent. And I know, you can't always trust recruiting rankings, and there's a million anecdotes about, well, this guy was a 3-star, and he turned out to be a great player, and this guy was a 5-star, and he turned out to be a bust. But guys, it's not a coincidence that the best teams in the country every year are teams that are pretty high up there in recruiting rankings. Marcus Freeman's a great coach. Ryan Day is a good coach. They are there because of their players. So if Deion left, TCU could exploit that recruiting advantage even more. And I think the entire Big 12 would exhale if it happened. If he decided, you know what? I want a new challenge. I want to go somewhere where I can be at the top of the sport. So we'll see what happens. But Colorado's a dangerous team, man. We got to see what he can do without Shedeur there, without Travis Hunter there. Those are big questions he has to answer this year. But so far, in a lot of ways, they've exceeded expectations. I mean, it hasn't been a disaster at all. They're in good shape, and they're there because of Deion. And TCU interviewed him in that coaching search with Sonny, which is crazy to think about. But they were one of the first schools that really took that seriously. The idea of him coaching at the D1 level, the Power 5 level, Power 4 now. And Colorado went and made it happen. It's paid off for them in a big way. Now they're going to have to hold on to him, though, because Jerry Jones and that Cowboys organization, They're talking to Deion. There's mutual interest there. We'll come back, talk some basketball next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. One of our new sponsors, WayFair. Give your home the refresh it needs at wayfair.com. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. It's true. I cleaned up my closet today. Man, that made me feel better about my life. Whether you're tidying up, cleaning out, or just want to give your space a new look, WayFair has everything you need, all within your budget. Whether you want to look at furniture, whatever the case is, they have a huge selection. It's free and hassle-free delivery. Even for the larger items, it's so easy to navigate their website. You can find everything you need in no time. There's something for every style and every home. WayFair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration for every space. Give your home the refresh it needs at WayFair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WayFair.com. WayFair, every style, every home. TCU Women's Hoops back on the floor tonight. They're playing UCF for the second time this season. Handled UCF really well on the road in their Big 12 season opener about a month ago. And, yeah, that game's at Shaw-Meyer Arena. I saw Mark Campbell is trying to really pump up, the fan base, get people in the seats, saying, hey, we need to break the attendance record. We need people to be there. This is a fun team, man. They're 5-0 in conference play. I think they'll be 6-0 at the end of this ballgame tomorrow night. And then the schedule really ramps up. They're going to play Utah, who's ranked number 22 in the country, Oklahoma State, number 21 in the country. Kansas State's a top 15 team. Baylor has been the class of the league for a long time. All that's happening within like a 3-week span. But first things first, taking care of the business in front of you, which is beating UCF, and they'll have the opportunity tonight. As far as yesterday's episode go, talked about Bud Clark coming back. Jackie Sterling says, I think we could have a big year coming. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I've said this for months now, but this is a huge year for the coaching staff. There's going to be high expectations. There should be. They're returning a lot of players. And honestly, this defense looks like they could be in better shape, at least to start the year, than the offense, which is wild to think about. But your safety room is going to be good. Your corners with guys coming back from injury should be pretty solid. Defensive line seemed to improve through the year. Linebacker is going to be a question mark. But you got Caleb Alarms over there. Max Carroll, a young guy they really like. There's a lot of positive things about this TCU football team. Zoom Play says this is big and good news for TCU. It really is. I mean, Bud coming back is unexpected, and it's a big lift for this team. I also think it's a great example of the cool side of NIL. Like in the past, Bud, his decision to come back for a 5th year would have been pretty simple. It's like, no, I'm going to go try my hand at the NFL. Eventually, you have to give it a shot. Maybe it's not going to work out, but I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and see where I get drafted and see if I can make a team, right? But now, with name, image, and likeness, okay, Bud's kind of undersized at his position for the next level. Well, he can come play here another year. And it's not because he needs to put more tape out there. I mean, he's done really good things. He had 3 picks this year. He had 44 tackles. But it's just, hey, I can make some more money. I can play college football, have a great understanding of what I need to do. Year 2 in the system, year 6 of being a student athlete here at TCU. I know what needs to happen to make this work. And so it's a huge thing that he's coming back. Again, this upcoming season, TCU is banking on continuity. That's what they're putting their eggs in the basket for. They're saying, you know what? We think we can win because we have returning production. We've set a culture here, and guys are buying into it. And we're going to have leadership. We're going to have accountability. And we're going to have dudes that can just play. And so we're not overloading the transfer portal. We're going to add some people. We have added some people. But if this team is going to reach its ceiling and reach its potential, it's going to be because the players that came back for another year for showing up and making things happen. We'll be back tomorrow. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to the YouTube channel or on your favorite podcast platform.